Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Manchester City podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network. Today I am joined once again by Josh Vince from the Daily Arsenal podcast. I'm sure he's not going to gloat too much, although that is a distinct possibility. Hi Josh, how are we?
Hi Jules, I'm great, mate. I'm really good. You know, I will do my best not to gloat too much. It's been a while since we've been in a position like this, so it's going to be hard to properly sort of, keep myself tempered. But I'll do my best. We work together. We're colleagues, technically. So, I'm going to be nice.
I really appreciate that candor. Thank you, Josh. I'll tell you what. How about you get the gloating out early? I'm going to pass you the mic, so to speak, pass you the reins, and give you however long you want to rub it in. Describe your thoughts and feelings as the full-time whistle went.
I'll be honest with you, Jules. It could be summed up in 2 words. 2 very, very simple words in the English language. I think you know what they are. I think everybody listening knows well what they are. So I'll get my gloating out in just those 2. Stay humble. Honestly, it was just, admittedly, Haaland still got one back on us by pointing to his shirt at the end of the game, and it was, the thing is, I've seen a lot of commentators be really upset about Miles Lewis-Skelly doing Haaland's sort of celebration and things like that, and the team ribbing each other. But that's what the Premier League has been lacking for a little bit, like a proper rivalry. And come full time, it was such a joy to see the Emirates so bouncing, to see Havertz on the score sheet was excellent as well, to see the performances of the youngsters. It was just let's call it a very positive last half hour, because there was a big chunk of that game which was quite hard to watch. I think for any football fan, it would have been quite hard to watch. What about yourself? What were your thoughts at full time?
Well, I mean, stay humble was definitely on the brain, but maybe not in the same way. Yeah, I think most people involved with City were seething. Naturally, losing to a main rival is never good. Getting hammered by a main rival is pretty catastrophic, and especially on the back of what had been, bar the odd Champions League result, an upturn in form, unbeaten in 6 in the Premier League. Kind of solidified that 4th place at the time, looking up instead of down for the first time in maybe a couple of months. So yeah, I think that Arsenal result has probably knocked a bit of wind out of the sails of Pep Guardiola's side. And yes, losing by 4, conceding 5. It's only the second time Pep has conceded 5, by the way.
Oof, that's not great.
Oh, at City at least, and
Yes.
it's his all-time, not all-time. It's a joint record loss for City under his stewardship as well. So yeah, it was quite a hammering, to be quite honest. But there will be another day. It's only 3 points. The season won't be defined by it. It probably gets City entirely out of the title race now, but that was probably already the case.
Yeah.
You mentioned quite a few things that we'll get into. Just to preface a bit of the podcast, you mentioned the needle between the 2 sides, and that the league needs that. We'll go into that in a bit more depth later on. But first of all, I want to ask you, where do you think the game was won and lost for both sides?
Firstly, I just want to mention something very quickly. Obviously, you say it was devastating being hammered by a rival. Welcome to the club. That's happened to us for the last 7 years whenever we played City. I remember the first game back from COVID at the Etihad. Xhaka got a red card and you thumped us. So it's one of those games that could throw up a brutal result. Where the game was won and lost, I think in terms of... I think it was in 2 parts. I think it was in Arsenal's press. Firstly, I think that was the most important thing. And I think it was, for some reason, Pep Guardiola decided that the midfield doesn't really matter and put a really weird configuration in the middle of the park. And I think, ultimately, that's where the game was won. The overwhelming of the midfield by Arsenal in that game.
Yeah, I'd agree wholeheartedly. I think you're not the first team this year to isolate that as a weakness for City, because it definitely has been. Obviously, we've on this podcast, we've talked to death about the absence of Rodri and how important he is, and even we have discussed that. He is slightly adapted, finally, to put a double pivot in there over the last week or so, the last couple of weeks. That double pivot was Bernardo Silva and Kovacic, experienced pros that are good on the ball, but yeah, it didn't fill many City fans with optimism seeing that on the team sheet. Not that you ever know how the team is going to line up. There can be 5 defenders and he only plays 3 at the back sometimes. So
it's very true.
So you never second guess the great bald man anymore. But yeah, this performance and this result definitely leaves a lot of questions. You mentioned Miles Lewis-Skelly, of course. He played a pivotal part in the match. Getting himself embroiled with some beef with the big Norwegian.
Of course,
you must be so pleased about how he is found his feet in the Arsenal side and B, that special moment on Sunday.
Yeah, pleased, and oddly, it's one of those things as a football fan, especially as you get a little bit older and you're sort of past the point where you could, as much as you would dream to, physically play for your team. Like, I'm 29 now, but my body's about 40, so there's no way I could play for Arsenal. But there's a sense of real pride in seeing a youngster, especially academy graduate, coming through the ranks. And I think Lewis-Skelly's been the biggest surprise of Arsenal's season, I think. We knew that he was going to be quite good. He's done fairly well. But Lewis-Skelly, especially being a midfielder, the way that he's adapted into that left-back role and has completely outperformed Zinchenko in the sense of being a left-back who can invert. And the fact Arsenal for the last couple of months, we've had a debate a lot on the Arsenal podcast about the number 8 position, whether Declan Rice should be playing number 8, whether he should be playing deeper and Marino should be playing 8, if Marino's good enough. What I think we're starting to understand now about Miles Lewis-Skelly is for an 18-year-old, he has so much awareness and confidence and ability on the ball that he's able to invert and really push forward, giving Rice a little bit of freedom to either sit back or, if Skelly inverts into a more defensive role, giving Rice the opportunity to go and have a little bit of a run and have a little bit of go, which he was doing against City a lot. He was making a lot of runs down the left channel, which just weren't being picked out by the Arsenal team. And so having a player with that much confidence, and I think there's a beauty to having a youngster playing for you as well. They're not held back by the system having been beaten into them. They go out there to show themselves and to perform to the highest level of their ability. And I think with him in particular, there's an arrogance there, which, alluding to what he did for Erling Haaland's celebration. And he did that for one simple reason. Erling Haaland now knows who he is.
Yeah. I mean, it's City fans obviously seething at it, but it definitely caused a spectacle, that's for sure. I just want to defend the City perspective on this one, though.
Yes, go for it.
And I also want to let everyone listening behind the curtain a little bit. So we all record on the same platform. And when I went to record an episode 2 days ago, I think Josh and the Arsenal team were the last guys there. And I noticed on our soundboard, there was a clip of the Stay Humble bit. So I haven't listened to your episode yet, but give me a 10-second summary of how you used that, please.
Very simply, for those of you who listen to any of these shows on the Global Sports Podcast Network, you'll know that there's an intro clip. It's a little jingle, effectively, which introduces every episode. And at the end of it, I just managed to find a little bit of audio of Erling Haaland in the 2-2 result, not a win, a draw, in the 2-2 result, saying to Mikel Arteta, a man who, by the way, was the assistant manager at City, admittedly before his time, but has ties to the club, looking at him and going, stay humble, yeah. And that was just the introduction to the episode, to which I then said, yep, stay humble, Erling. Welcome to the Daily Arsenal Podcast.
Oh, well, you've whoever's listening now, you've immediately made yourself a figurehead of hatred, which is exactly what I wanted. And now
That's absolutely fine.
And now I'm going to defend the City perspective.
Bring it on.
So obviously, when you look at the clip like that, the "Stay Humble" tagline is catchy, and it's easy to to use that against someone, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with the run that City went on afterwards. It lends itself to comedy. The bigger
Yes.
you are, the harder you fall. The biggest and best teams and the biggest and best players are going to get the most ridiculed because
Of course
the
they
most
will,
people
yeah.
amount that care about them. But I think what he means by saying that is you guys haven't actually won anything with this set of players.
Mhm.
You won one FA Cup under Arteta, yeah, but it's pretty much a new squad since, isn't it? So, as you say, an 18-year-old that has got 13 senior matches in football, laying it on one of this generation's greatest players. Even if Haaland retired today, he would be one of the best players of this generation. Facts.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone other than the aliens of Messi and Ronaldo can really hold a candle to his goal scoring. Maybe Lewandowski, but that's up for debate. I think Haaland will surpass him as time goes. Anyway, I understand why Arsenal did it, of course, because there is so much needle in this rivalry. Gabriel got asked about it before the game. Arteta said there would be no emotion going into it, and Gabriel said there absolutely will be.
Of course there will be, yes.
And of course there will be. But of course Arteta's got to say that too. But I can totally see why everyone is dunking on Haaland and City because, when you've won so much in recent history, people are going to want to. But I think that was kind of the point that he felt that Arsenal were getting embroiled in a lot of extracurriculars, let's say, without anything to back it up. And this kind of feels like another moment of that. But I will say that these type of moments are what lead to the winning in the future, aren't they? So, and if you end up winning, everyone will look back at this. Will be a seminal moment either way, probably, won't it?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of two of the country's greatest teams going against each other, is it provides us moments like this that we will talk to death for no one's amusement bar our own. But it's very much how it is. Would you like a little rebuttal for MLS there?
Do you know what? I can't wholly disagree with you. It's true. We've not won anything since the FA Cup when Arteta first came in. And that was 5 odd years ago. So, it's been a long time coming. Arsenal haven't won anything with this group of players. And City, no one can take it away from them, have done phenomenally in the last decade. What is it? Is it 7 in the last 10 years?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, 7 in the last 10 years. That's an almost unprecedented record. It's phenomenal. I think where a lot of it comes from is obviously being pegged back to second twice, very close, hurt the squad quite a lot and gave them a real motivation to go on and win it. City have been painted as the big rivals for the title in the last few years, and sort of it's built a bit of, I wouldn't necessarily even say animosity. It's not like us and Spurs. We genuinely hate Spurs. You would.
I think either from come on, Sunday proves that, and the last 2 seasons of league matches have all been absolute scraps, haven't they?
They have been, yeah. But I think it's scraps. I think it's competitive scraps. There is definitely, between the players at least, some disdain. And I think, like you say, when you're the best and you're the biggest, you do open yourself up a little bit for ridicule if things aren't going great. And Haaland is the figurehead of that. Realistically, he's the figurehead of the team, I think. You could very, very easily argue. So when he makes a comment like that to a manager who is, who's trying very hard to push himself up there, I get where the comment probably came from. And then looks at an 18-year-old, who even are you? Who even are you? Again, I do kind of understand the sentiment. I think it's very arrogant, but I understand the sentiment. He probably has earned the right to be arrogant. But in the same vein, I think there is every right to respond to that if a result goes the other way. So I think both instances are justified, because let's be honest, when Haaland did that the first time round, and when he threw the ball at the back of Gabriel's head, and when he said that to MLS, the first time round it was all laughing at Arsenal because they're bottling again, they're throwing the league away again. Haaland's right. In this instance, Arsenal beat Manchester City 5-1. We didn't see that coming. We spoke before the game. We did not see that coming at all. And it's a moment of the players being able to rebut each other. And like you say, it's realistically, between the players, it is genuine. But for the rest of us, it creates a real sort of excitement about the league and a real energy about the league, and those water cooler moments, which we all love really deep down inside.
Absolutely. And it creates a siege mentality, doesn't it? Which every manager tries to impose on their team, because it does spur sides on to create more than the sum of their parts. Not that your parts don't add up to much anyway, but the last couple of years you've needed that bit of extra, and maybe something like this. This very much could be a sliding doors moment, couldn't it? 5-1 win over the champions who you couldn't best for the previous 2 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're chasing a new challenger now, but I think if Arsenal do end up getting there at the end of the season, we'll look back at Sunday's game as one of the key moments.
100%. Yeah. Without a shadow of doubt, it will probably, if it goes on to happen, and I'll be honest with you, Jules, I never thought we would win it. I actually predicted City to win the league at the start of the season. I can't see Liverpool dropping 6 points, unless, of course, Everton do us a massive favour in the last ever, Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. But if we do go on to win it, then this game, and probably the game at Anfield, will be the two big games.
Definitely. And long live big club rivalries in the Premier League.
This is the thing. It's been so sanitized recently, hasn't it? When you look back at the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, the big rivalry really was City-Liverpool. And then all of the other derbies and rivalries were just a bit sanitized and a bit dull. It's fun to have a bit of aggie,
Definitely. There's so little of it. They've tried to make Brighton v Palace one of the marquee games of the season, haven't they?
They've tried.
Yeah, they've tried. I don't even think I don't think the Brighton fans care that much. I think Palace like beating Brighton, but I don't think Brighton care too much, to be honest.
At this point, Palace like beating anybody. Let's be honest.
We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll look at where this leaves both sides for the rest of the season.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Manchester City podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network. We're joined by Josh Vince from the Daily Arsenal podcast, and unfortunately we're dissecting everything that happened on Sunday. We're just going to look ahead now to where that leaves both sides for the rest of the season. Arsenal, of course, are still in the League Cup, which they'll be playing later today as we record.
Yeah.
Just quickly, how hopeful or not are you of turning that one around?
Do you know, it's a really good question. I think in terms of momentum, it's definitely with us and not with Newcastle. They probably have more to play for in this, though. They haven't won a trophy in 80 years. And it's at St. James's Park. We're 2-0 down already. And we played a very, very demanding game against realistic. Let's not be silly, Jules. It's been a rough ride, but realistically, still arguably one of the best teams in the world. So
shouldn't be beaten 5-1, that's for sure.
Shouldn't. In fact, the last time you conceded 5 goals in open play was 2008 against Middlesbrough. So, it's been some time. So I think, honestly, 2-0 at St. James's Park is a massive thing to overturn. If we can do it in an hour and a half's time, then wow, it'll probably be, along with the City result, our result of the season. But I'm not hugely confident, if I'm being totally honest with you.
And it would be good for you to win another trophy, wouldn't it? Because it would signify growth and development for this squad. And a lot of the times, teams that enter, this new era of where they're at. So you've been there or thereabouts, but solidifying himself. If you think of Wenger, Mourinho, these guys that took their teams on, they started by winning caps first.
They did.
Mourinho especially, he loved the League Cup because he thought it set the team up well for the backstretch of the season, getting in that championship winning mode. I think Newcastle have had their eye on this one for the last few results, to be honest, because since they beat you, they've gone a bit wayside. But what would constitute a good season for you at this point is where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Do you think Arsenal will win the title? off the back of such a good result that could, catapult you further? Or have you left yourself with a little bit too much left to do? 6 points off Liverpool. They've got a game in hand as well. 14 games left. There's still plenty of time, but they do look bloody good, don't they?
They look fantastic, and they look like they're on a march too. I think to answer your question, I kind of have to relate back to something we actually spoke about a little while ago, because in the Arsenal podcast, we've talked quite a lot about what would constitute a successful season for us. I think ultimately we've drawn too many games. Effectively, we've been a little bit too naive, maybe a little bit too... We played a bit too safe. That's definitely a criticism that's been made of Arsenal this season, that they're a bit risk averse, and I think it holds merit generally over the whole course of the season. When I think about where we are as well, you said earlier, managers often, kickstart new regimes with a cup win. Arteta won the cup in this first year, and as you said, completely different squad now. So this squad...
That felt like an overperformance at the time, didn't it? Whereas if you won the FA Cup now, it would be, one of the top teams have won the FA Cup.
Hugely. And this is part of my point. I still think we're ahead of schedule. Realistically, 2 years ago, when we were second, that should not have happened. That was a year where we should... Well, I mean, it was amazing, but realistically, we were looking at 5th, 4th. Like, get back into Europe. We'd been 6th and 8th, and then it was like, right, we need to get back into Europe. Let's aim for 5th to 4th. Even if it's, a Europa League run, we'll take that because it's showing progression. We ended up 2nd. Then the year after, again, Saliba was fully fit. We missed out on the league by 2 bloody points. And, it would have been amazing because it would be the 20th anniversary of the Invincibles. So I still think we're ahead of schedule, really. I think this is the year that a cup would suit us best. I don't see us winning the league because that we've left it so long, and all the draws and everything to do with that has been difficult to... It's difficult to justify winning the league with that. I'm going to say something now which is going to sound absurd, but I genuinely think it's a possibility. I fancy us for the Champions League.
I don't think that's that crazy. I think the type of football that you play lends itself to those tricky European games, doesn't it? You don't concede many chances, you don't concede many goals. And I think with Saka out for, he'll be back by the end of the season, sure, but will he be at full pace? So naturally, with your most creative player on the sidelines, well, I say that you still scored 5 on Sunday, didn't you? So.
Yeah, which is, and that's rare for us. Honestly, the way that we're playing in Europe at the moment, we conceded 3 goals in the league, in the sort of league section, which is remarkable. We weren't scoring as free, but during that time, we had Ødegaard out for a brief period. We had Rice out for a little while as well. We had a lot of key players out. Now we've got Saka out. He should be back at the end of February. I expect it'll take him a month to get up to pace, but thankfully, Ethan Nwaneri is playing brilliantly on that right-hand side. But what about you, Jules? Because obviously this is the City podcast, but where do you... Obviously, it's been a rough year for City. It's been a really tough year. What would you now constitute a successful season for Manchester City at this point in time after this result?
It's difficult because you always want to have the loftiest ambitions when you're following the loftiest club, right? Anyone at the start of the season would think it was blasphemy if I said getting a Champions League place was a good season. But the fear of God has been put into City by just the amount of losses and the lack of control. Everything that made City so good feels like it's crumbling. And it's still a fantastic team with the best number 9 in the world and world-class players everywhere and the best coach. Finally, we've seen Pep have an off streak. We've never seen it before. It's crazy. That's why football is so brilliant, isn't it? So yeah, I guess the long-winded way is me justifying saying 4th place would be a good season, but it would only be good because it would stop the free fall. And then with the summer would obviously be incredibly important. New director of football coming in as well. So you'd imagine he'd want to put his imprint on the club, and Hugo Viana from Sporting.
Oh, that's a good appointment.
Yeah, but it means that cheeky Begiristain, who's been at the helms for ages and brought Pep in, is leaving. He's not done the best of the last couple of years, but he is been one of the main factors in City's domination over the last decade, and was pivotal to acquiring Pep in the first place. And who knows what happens if you don't get that man. But it just feels like a totally new era, and new and unknown is scary, Josh. You know what I mean? So, yeah, long-winded way of saying I think fourth. I feel sick saying it, because it could have been a fifth Premier League title in a row, which is what we all expected at the start of the season. I think everyone predicted it too, including yourself, as you said earlier.
I did, yeah.
So, yeah, football is cyclical. It always will be. We just got too accustomed to the way City were dominating, but it had never been done before. Might not get done again. So yeah,
the thing is, Jules, like, you did 4 on the trot, and that is the first time that's ever happened. 5th on the trot would have been frankly absurd. I think we all guessed it because it was kind of like you say, it's the norm. It's what we expect. It's what we're anticipating should happen. But realistically, like, if you did 5 in a row, it would be non-human. It wouldn't be right. So I totally understand, like, the disappointment at, not hitting the 5 and the fall off and everything like that. But I still think, as if you were a City fan, goodness me, hold your head up high for that team, because they've done insane things.
Definitely. 4 in a row, as we can look back on with hindsight, which is perfect, of course, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Everyone got pushed beyond what they're physically capable of generally in the treble season the year before.
Yeah.
Because that obviously played every game possible at the highest intensity, and we're seeing a lot of the fallout from that season now, I think, especially with international tournaments in both that season and after the end of the last one. So the players have had no opportunity to rest whatsoever. The players have also aged as well in those 2 years. They've tipped from that experienced pro into the aging pro type of thing,
Yeah.
And it all happened at the same time. A lot of that comes down to squad planning, because you're obviously aware that the bulk of your team are 29 to 31, and that some of them are injury prone, and Pep and Tiki chose to have a smaller squad because that's what Pep prefers. So he has to take some accountability for this, and I think we're seeing that rectified somewhat in the transfer market. City have made 5 signings, 3 for the first team, and then 2 that you'd hope would go on to be world beaters.
It was about 180 million, wasn't it? It was a huge amount of money.
Pep had signed either 6 or 7 players in January in his entire tenure before this season.
Wow.
And now he's signed 5 in this January. City are normally so proactive, right? This is obviously a reactive position the club find themselves in now.
100%.
But Marmoush looks like a baller, so who cares?
Very quickly on Marmoush, I do have to ask you, because I found this baffling in the game itself.
I know what you're going to say, and I agree, yeah.
What the hell was he doing in the middle? Like, him in the middle and Foden on the wing. He got them the wrong way round. It's simple.
Classic Pep overthink that wasn't it?
Yeah.
We'd just seen Marmoush tear Chelsea apart, making those direct runs from out to in on the left-hand side, completely tore Chelsea apart. And then Foden has even done an interview over the last week saying about how England should have used him centrally, and then Pep puts him out wide.
Yeah.
It was a bit baffling, and Marmoush looked like he was a bit lost, to be honest.
He did, yeah.
It can happen, man. Like, I don't think anyone expected him to be so good on his debut. He could have easily scored. He had 1 ruled out, was pivotal in another. And then Foden had found his scoring boots playing centrally again. So yeah, it really baffled me, but not the most baffling decision even on the team sheet. So
that's very true, because Foden was on the right, wasn't he? He was on the right-hand side. So I kind of get it for the cutting in, and he likes that, especially with Savino would be cutting in as well. But I do have to say, sort of like, even though Lewis Skelly has been very, very good, he's an 18-year-old still, and he's not the quickest. So Marmoush was surely honestly, when Arsenal fans saw that and saw Marmoush in the middle, it was like, oh, okay.
Did you expect Marmoush to be straight up against MLS? Was that?
I expected him to be up against Partey at right back. Thank God Timber was fit. And I have to say, actually, as much of, a very troublesome individual as he is, Partey was brilliant in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, which hurts to say.
And that's why I'm not going to. I'm just
Yeah.
not going to. I'm just not going to disagree with you.
That's absolutely fine. We'll leave it at that.
Well, before we do truly leave it, I just want to bring up that. Are you aware of what Arsenal's XG was before I say this?
Do you know what? I'm not actually. I think we've all been enjoying it too much to look at the stats.
Would you like to guess? And when I said this on the pod that we recorded the other day, I mentioned it, and well, I won't give the inkling because I'll kind of give it away. But it was surprising for the well.
I have a feeling that our XG was considerably lower than the actual scoreline because there was a lot of deflections and Havertz's chance was really tight as well. But then again, Havertz probably had a 0.99 when he missed the target. So I'm going to say that. Do you know what? I'm going to say that City probably had an XG of about 2, and I'm going to say Arsenal about. Do you know what? I'm going to say 2-3. 2-3.
The distance between your guesses is nearly bang on, but Arsenal's XG was 1 and City's was 0.82. How crazy is that? If you think, obviously there was that Havertz chance, right? But you think of the Partey one, that's got to be like a 0.01, surely. MLS went through Ortega's hands from with a defender in front of him as well. So
definitely
that would have
should have saved that, by the way.
Yeah,
100%
I agree.
should have saved that.
It was good play by Rice initially and good movement by MLS, but I can't understand why he was stood off so much and allowed to pick his spot. And even then, you could all see the spot was going to be to Ortega's left. And then Ortega even seen that as well, but I don't know, man.
Speaking of standing off, the Partey goal, no one closed him down. At any point, no one closed him. Wanyeri, no one closed him down. Also, actually, that's a good point for the XG. Wanyeri's shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Wanyeri's shot, awkward, difficult. Like, that would be a low XG. So, yeah, I see your point.
I'm not using that. Well, I was going to bring it up and say, is that luck? And on another day, do we see a different result? Which I'm going to answer by saying yes, but I don't want it to take away from the fact that, City were clearly worse than Arsenal, especially in that second half. Only in that second half, to be honest.
Yeah. On this occasion for luck, I'm actually normally I agree with you because football is such a volatile game. But on this occasion, I'm actually going to say no. Simply because of Arsenal's press and the way they did it. They set so many traps. So Arsenal recently have been pressing in a 4-4-2. And it's been okay. It's been fairly successful for them. In this game, they pressed in a 5-3-2. Incredibly narrow, but with 5 at the back and Partey screening the back line. That press from Havertz and Ødegaard was so impressive. And the way that they, especially sort of, attacking Stones, who's not fully fit, and attacking Kanji, who's having a bit of a crisis of confidence at the moment. I think he planned it brilliantly. Yeah, sure, a few of the shots definitely lucky, but I think the way that Arsenal played the game, I think deserved the victory. Probably not by that much, but the scoreline itself is a fluke, but still wonderful to watch from our perspective at the very least.
And I think the scoreline, I think, is a reflection of the capitulation in the second half. So, all the damage was done in like a 25-minute spell, really. But yeah, that's the mentality seems to have gone from City, right? And these are all seasoned winners. That's the last thing you expect to go, but to concede that goal, the Partey goal, immediately after getting back into the game, and deservedly so as well, in my opinion. It felt like City had more chances in the first half as well, to be honest. And the Haaland goal felt like a fair reflection of the second half up until that point.
Brilliant goal, by the way.
Yeah, it was class.
The scooped cross from Savinho. Everyone's talking about Haaland's leap. Great. The cross from Savinho was incredible.
Savinho doesn't even look anymore. This is a 20-year-old. He knows exactly where the space is and where Haaland's going to be. And I think that the early signs of what I'm seeing between them two this year, I think Savinho could have 100 assists for City, if he doesn't leave in the next few years.
He's a terrifying player. He's probably the player who scares me the most at City at the moment is Savinho.
Yeah, he can go either way, and his intelligence to find space at such a young age is great as well. And then you add in the pace, and his finishing needs work, definitely. But he's got an eye for a pass, and he's not one of these like no end product wingers. He's got vision, and he's got execution from out wide. Like the weight of the pass and the style of the pass is always accommodating for the player ahead of him, and that's a sign of a quality passer, in my opinion.
And also what we said as well earlier on, he's young and he's not afraid to make those mistakes, which often Pep knocks out of players quick.
In a struggling team.
Yeah, exactly. As a team that's low on confidence, but he's exactly the sort of player you need right now. When your team is low on confidence, you need a youngster who's just going to go, I'll sort this out, and just do things like that. So he's a real asset for City at the moment, Savini. I think he's probably your best signing in years.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I go back to the lack of squad planning for that as well, because City didn't seem to miss in the transfer market, but they have done. Oh, the lack of signings have been the big miss, really. But we're gonna wrap it up there. I'm just gonna quickly ask Josh first.
Oh,
I just want to know your predictions for both City and Arsenal at the end of the season. What positions are they both going to be? What silverware, if any, will either side have? And as a little treat, if you think any player from either team is going to be player of the year, throw that on top as well.
I don't think we can look past Salah as player of the year, unfortunately. I think he's got that nailed down. I think it's going to be Arsenal second still, as Arsenal fans don't kill me, but Arsenal second. Manchester City third. I think you can pull it back to third. You're in the FA Cup still, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think you could win that, and I think, do you know what? To hell with it. Arsenal winning the Champions League, first European trophy. What about you, Jules? Where do you think things are going to go?
I've tried to remain so optimistic all season. I really have, and I said on the wrap-up show with all the English teams that we both were on that no one will want City in the playoff round. Maybe everyone except Real Madrid. And that's who you get. And that's a consequence of being rubbish in the Champions League, you know? They had, after the first 3 games, 0-0 draw against Inter Milan, which City with a dominant team, and then 1 4-0 and 1 5-0 win. No goals conceded first 3 games, second place in the table. From that position to end up in the last playoff spot is absolutely catastrophic.
It was awful,
but it was a good comeback win. You know, you can only play you're up against. Club Brugge beating Villa this year as well. So I think it was a good performance in the end, actually, to scrape over the line. But the result of that is, here you go. Here's bloody Real Madrid.
Real Madrid.
There's 4 years in a row City and Real Madrid have played each other now.
Is it that many?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, realistically, probably beating Arsenal would have helped a little bit with that.
Yeah, definitely. Real are not like at their absolute best, but they're still Real Madrid. They
are finding their feet a bit, though. They started off rocky, but Mbappe's finding his feet. He's working well with Vinny. Jude is doing a really good job in defensive midfield.
You mentioned all these players.
Valverde's been okay as well. Modric still comes on every now. It's going to be tough. I'll be honest. I'll definitely be watching the games.
It's a shame. It's a shame that, like, in this round, where previous years you'd have seen someone drop into the Europa League, and then City would just clean that one up and get into the Champions League either way. Then, right? But that doesn't happen anymore. So we could be watching a tough game against Madrid. City can still do it. Do not get me wrong. Like, all it takes is a solid performance and Haaland to put away his chances, and you can beat anyone.
City have the firepower to win the Champions League. It's just whether like you said earlier, it's whether the mentality's still there or not. And if that slips, then it's going to be tricky.
Yeah. So it got into my head. I think Real Madrid will get over the line, but I don't think it's going to be a hammer in. At least I say that, hopefully, trying to forget about Sunday. And in the Premier League, I think I agree with you. Third seems about right, but I'm not super confident about it. City will get a Champions League place because fifth should be enough, which is a good year for that to be the case.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, for City. But yeah, third, finishing above Chelsea would, from this position, would probably be a good season, I think, yeah. So, yeah, that will do our pretty long-winded wrap-up of Sunday's match. It's been a pleasure having Josh here. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, maybe we'll do some more often. We've become created a good rapport over the last week or so.
We have done, yes.
maybe I'm a good luck charm for you and Arsenal, which can't go on for too long. So this
Jools,
is the last time I'm ever going to speak to you, Josh.
You're welcome on the Arsenal podcast anytime. Anytime.
I turned that down the other day, and I might stick to that as well, to be honest.
Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to get a little soundbite of you saying I'm your good luck charm, and I'm going to add it to our jingle at the start. So you're in every podcast from now on, and you can see us through to the Premier League and the Champions League titles.
Okay, thanks for listening. Yeah, stay tuned for everything that we got coming up soon. We'll obviously have coverage of that massive Real Madrid fixture and City's pursuit of the Champions League places in the Premier League. I've been Jools Jordan-Probert for the Daily Manchester City podcast and the Daily Arsenal podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.